Hello and welcome to yesterday's Airlines. Time for another tier list ranking video for a recent set of releases, and this time round it is jcwings who have literally just at the end of the month announced their next batch of releases. Now obviously jcwings are one of the big manufacturers in 400 scale, but they are unusual. They make all the models for geminijets, and they make a lot of models overall. One of the biggest manufacturers of die-cast model aircraft in China. But their release schedule is quixotic, to say the least. And they are renowned for announcing models which then can sometimes take years to get into the hands of collectors. There are literally some models that they've announced probably more than 2 years ago that still haven't been made. So it's a bizarre set of affairs when they announce models, because some of them turn up reasonably quickly, though almost never within a month of announcement, and some will be, you'll be waiting for a long time. So that's going to be the case with this set of releases as well. Some of these are going to turn up sooner than others. But nonetheless, let's do what I usually do and slip through all the models, working out what's scrap metal and what is supersonic, and obviously all the bits in between that. Now the other thing to also mention about jcwings is that jcwings have got this excellent flaps down option for a lot of their wide body molds. They've got it for the 777s, they've got it for their A350s, they've got it for their new 747-400 as well. And so, and I think 787 too. And so they often announce two versions of the same model, and that's the case again this month. I think at least 4 of these releases have got a flaps down version coming too. So technically you could say that those are 2 releases where they've got a flaps down or not, but I'm just going to treat them as one because fundamentally the model's the same, except that he's got a different set of wings attached to it. Okay, so we'll start off with the Boeings, and the first release is a Japan Airlines 747-400 JA8915 in the 1990 scheme. I've always been quite a fan of this scheme, even though it's quite a simple scheme. Having the grey line with the red cube over the nose always gave it a kind of classy look, I think. So it's a nice scheme. It's also nice to see a few more retro-ish liveries coming from jcwings, and it's good to see their new 747-400 mold getting a bit of usage as well. Now the mold's really good. It's really nice. Got really good detailing, really good shape. And the undercarriage is a little short maybe, but everything else about it's really nice. It's a little bit of a shame that jcwings are unlikely to ever really use it the way that they ought to. They're gonna release some pretty random modern freighters like that Act Air Cargo one, which they did. It's like, really? And they'll no doubt do a selection of Asian flag carriers like JAL. They've already done Thai Airways, and I'm sure we'll be getting more of that kind of thing. But it's unlikely they're ever going to release a large number of North American or European or other 747-400s on this mold, partly because obviously they're competing against Gemini, and partly just because JC just doesn't tend to get that adventurous. Nonetheless, it's good to see the mold getting used, and as I say, nice classic release. This one is going to be pretty good for me. This one's going up straight into the supersonic area for the reasons I mentioned. It's retro, it's a nice mold, it's a really nice mold, and this one's even one of the ones which is going to be out reasonably soon. And it also comes with a flaps down version as well, so that might be your preference or not. I have to say that the flaps down on the 747-400 is really delicate, and I've got 1 or 2 which have had damage to the flaps, so be careful around that. I'd probably stick to the flaps up, but flaps down does look very nice nonetheless. Okay, next up we've got a 777-200 in the colours of NokScoot, which was a joint venture between Singapore Airlines Scoot subsidiary and Nok Air of Thailand. Scoot and Nok are already rubbish names for airlines. Adding them together as NokScoot creates kind of an abomination in airline naming. And similarly, Scoot's livery, which is already very bright, and Nok's livery, which is also very bright, slam those together and you get equally unpleasant livery. I have to say I really dislike the Nok bird beak, which is not only on the nose but also embarrassingly drawn on the tail. So this is never going to make a livery combination for me, which looks nice. NokScoot is now out of business. I didn't survive COVID. Can't say that I miss them too much because, as I say, yuck. But on the more pleasant side, the jcwings 777-200 is an excellent mould. So in that respect, the model will be fine if and when it gets released. Again, this is one which is going to be out in the next 2 or 3 months as opposed to the next 2 years. It does also come with a flap sound version as well. It's not especially original. NokScoot has been made multiple times already. I think jcwings have made it before, but on their previous seamed mould. It's been made twice, I think, by Phoenix as well. It's a ugly livery, not particularly exciting, but a great mould. So for me, this one's going to go up into workhorse territory for that reason. It's really not something I'd ever buy. And even if I collected low-cost airlines from that region, I'd be really hesitant to buy such an ugly thing. Okay, another 777 is being released, and this time around it's the next generation 777. It is the 777-9 in the Boeing company colours. Again, I think this isn't the first time again that jcwings have released a 777-9. They are the only manufacturer presently to have gone to the trouble to create the mould for this type, which is quite impressive, and jcwings has shown a lot of good work in creating new moulds in recent years. So they've already made, I think, this exact model or one with the very similar but just a different rego. I think they made N779XW and this one's N779XX. And they've got two versions of the mold, one with the winglets down, the wings not folded, and one with the wings folded up. They don't have a version which enables you to fold the wingtips up and down, because allegedly Boeing aren't happy with that being done in 400 scale. I don't really understand why they give a shit, but nonetheless, that's the kind of the scuttlebutt on that. This one is another version with the wings down. It's going to be just the same as the previous version, I imagine, just with a slightly different reg. Hopefully jcwings will have learned to print the window line a little lower, because that's been an ongoing issue with their 777-9s. But otherwise, it's a really good mould. And so for this one, I'm going to slip this one up into the high flyer territory, because it's going to be a nice release. Okay. There's only one 787 announcement this month, and that also is one which comes in flaps up and flaps down varieties, and that is for MIAT, Mongolian Airlines. Recently, this aircraft, JU 1789, has been seen out the paint shop in MIAT's rather attractive colours. So it's not surprising that it's getting an announcement from jcwings, but this is one of those times when you've got to be careful, because when is jcwings actually going to release this model? It's one which could take us some time to come out. Having said that, MIAT has got a really lovely scheme. It's got this kind of horse logo, a charging kind of horse head on its tail, and there's a repetition of that on the fuselage as well. It looks really, really nice, the scheme. I really like it. And it's really, I don't have any aircraft from Mongolia in my collection, and I'd like to get some, though this one doesn't really fit, unfortunately, within my time period of collecting. But it's a lovely scheme, and jcwings again has an excellent 787 mould, possibly the best, at least as good as the ngmodels version. So it's It's right up there as one of the best molds for the type. So for me, this one is going to be a good release. As long as they get it out in time, I'm going to slip this one up into supersonic territory because it's an interesting airline, it's an attractive scheme, it's a great mold. Moving over into Airbus territory, and the 787's direct competitor is A350-900, and there is one of those announced this month, and that is a Lufthansa variety wearing this clean tech flyer special scheme. Arguably, it's not really a scheme, is it? It's an all-white aeroplane with even at the tail has just got the outline of the Lufthansa logo on it and the line. Maybe that's part of this whole, clean tech flyer kind of initiative, which I assume relates to biofuels or something along those lines, some aspect of cutting carbon emissions. Haven't really been paying too closer attention, to be honest. The aircraft itself is not a new frame. I think it was serving previously with Philippines. Not that really makes any difference to the model, I guess. It's going to be one that I imagine will excite Lufthansa collectors. It also comes in a flaps up and flaps down variety here. But again, it's one of the models which has not got a release date associated with it, so buyer beware, or pre-orderer beware. Don't ever pre-order jcwings models, people. That's stupid. It's a really tedious scheme. I don't like it. It's just white with some words written on it. So it's kind of a nothing livery. The jcwings A350 mold itself is pretty good. It's just a shame that they don't really seem to get cockpit windows particularly well on their A350s. But the mold itself has been improved. The nose has been changed. It doesn't really compete with the NG models or the Aviation 400 molds, but it's not a bad mold, and it's certainly better than the Phoenix one. So for me, this one is going up into workhorse territory as well, because it's pretty boring, really, isn't it? The next A350 is one that was announced this month by Phoenix, and that's the Airbus house colours in this Qantas scheme, or Qantas pseudo scheme. Our Spirit flies further, the part of the A350 purchase that Qantas has made, I discussed in the Phoenix video. So it's not surprising, again, it's a recent announcement. It's not surprising that jcwings have announced it. Again, it's in flaps up and flaps down versions. Again, it doesn't have a release date associated with it. It's a little bit more exciting, however, than that Lufthansa variety we had beforehand. And as I said before, the A350 mold from jcwings is pretty good, even if they don't always get the cockpit printing correct. So for me, this one is going to slip up into the high flyer territory. I would probably buy this over the Phoenix version if it was going to be released anywhere near the same sort of time, which it probably won't be. But to be honest, someone else is bound to release it anyway. So I imagine Phoenix one will be out next month. This jcwings one will be out in 6 months if you're lucky. But between now and then, you'd like to think Aviation 400 would get around to releasing it. Okay, another retro airliner, and I say retro firmly with tongue in cheek because this scheme dates from 2007, but for most of the audience, I imagine they consider that to be retro. I don't at all consider it to be retro, but nonetheless, it's a livery that's no longer with us, from an airline that's no longer with us, and it is the classic German charter airline LTU, though the livery is not classic. It is the 2000, I think it's 2007 scheme that LTU took on when Air Berlin took the airline over, and they only operated in this very Air Berlin-esque scheme for a year or so before Air Berlin swallowed up the entire airline, rather disappointingly. So the scheme itself isn't anywhere near as cool as the scheme that LTU was putting on its A330s in the 90s or early 2000s, but it's an interesting livery choice from jcwings. It's slightly unusual, not the sort of thing they necessarily make that much. So it's actually, reasonably interesting release choice from them. The jcwings A330s, Yeah, they're not spectacular. They've solved most of the flapping wings problems they did have at one point in time. I still think the undercarriage is too short and not necessarily in 100% the right place either. But they still can look pretty good. And this one, just because the subject matter is a bit more interesting than your average selection for an A330 in 400 scale nowadays, I'm going to move this one up in high flyer. Next up, we've got an A350. Now, I thought this was an A330, which is why it's sitting in this part of the review, but apparently it's an A350, I just noticed. And China Airlines. Can you think of anything more jcwings than releasing a China Airlines model? It's so standard jcwings and standard Phoenix airline that, you know, it's just a slight parody. So they released a lot of China Airlines, which is no real surprise to anyone, I imagine. It's a lovely scheme, Dynasty, great scheme. It's got all the same, you know, they all look fine on their A350. They've released several China Airlines A350s already, but never quite, I think, the standard schemes, always with special stickers on. And again, this one comes up in flaps up and flaps down varieties too. But, you know, it's not exciting me because, you know, we've seen it before. And someone else will do it just as well or better. I'm going to move this one into workhorse. Okay, 4 to go, and we're getting into perhaps the more interesting end of the releases now. Next up is a TAP Air Portugal A330 Neo CSTUI. We're in this 100th titling, which I assume is 100 years of TAP Air Portugal. When this scheme first came out, I really wasn't a big fan of it, but it's kind of grown on me now, and I really like in the colours, and obviously they're the colours of the Portuguese flag as well, so that's quite nice. So the scheme actually is quite attractive, even though there's a lot of white on it. jcwings have the best A330-900 Neo mould. There's only 2 available at the moment. The Phoenix one is inferior in most details, annoyingly, because they do have a good standard A330. The jcwings one I do think is better, but it does have wings that are a little bit high at their tips. But nonetheless, it's a nice scheme. I assume they've got licensing for it because TAP are incredibly litigious when it comes to licensing. But that might put the cost up slightly, I'm not really sure. But I think this will be a nice release. They've released one TAP A330 already in the, I think it was the first one that was delivered, colours. Nice to get another one, I guess, if you're a TAP collector, and the 100th titles at least kind of fill up some of that gigantic amount of white in the rear fuselage. So for me, this one's a high flyer. It looks quite nice, and I imagine it'll be a good model. So the next 3 releases are all European. The first one is a Flybe Embraer regional jet. This model actually isn't a new release at all. They're releasing it here, or they're saying it is, but you can see by the part number, which is W400-0001, that it's one of the Wings 400 exclusive models, or models that were at least allegedly exclusive for Wings 400 of the UK. There were 2 of them, and this was one of that pair, GFB JH. It's going to be fine. It's exactly the same model as released previously. I assume they're just giving it a more global release. It's nice. It was nice to get them, and you know, back then, and when they were first announced, and Wings 400 were selling them, and I'd imagine most people in the UK have already got this model if they wanted it. I'd have given this like a high flyer probably, but because it's already been released, it's not really even a proper release, I'd say. It's just a re-release or a further release. I'm just going to move this one into workhorse. 2 more to go, and the next 2 are both quite surprising models. First up, we've got an MD-80. An MD-80, I hear you say? What's an MD-80? Nobody in 400 scale usually knows because so few of them get released. One of the most common airliners in the history of civil aviation, but no one's interested in 400 scale, especially not Gemini. So it's nice to see JC remember that they've got this mould and produce one of the most important MD-80 operators from Europe, which is Finnair. It's a shame that they released it in this scheme, the latest scheme. They did the same with the KLM 77400. They released the latest scheme first, and then later on they released the scheme which is more notable for the type, which is from the 90s. So there's a chance that they may do the same here for the MD-80 and release the much more exciting 90s scheme down the road. I hope they do, because I'm not going to buy this one because it's just outside my time period. But it's nice to see it being released. I mean, the mould, it's nothing special. It's an MD-80. It's a decent MD-80. It's probably only marginally better than the Dragon Wings MD-80. But it's just nice to see someone release an MD-80, frankly. So this one has to get up there in the high flyer territory at least, just because, hell, it's an MD-80. It's got a T-tail, and you don't see many T-tail releases from jcwings anymore. Last model is the Super Guppy, so in the Airbus Skylink colours. And this one's interesting because it appears, judging by the advertising for it, that you're not just going to get a model with this one, you're also going to be getting a skin tag, which I assume everyone knows what skin tag is. Skin tag is where they've actually found the actual aeroplane when it's been scrapped. They've cut up bits of it and they make them into these little souvenir tags. So it looks like it's going to come with a skin tag. I think they're doing a 200 scale version of this as well. It's a really cool idea to connect the skin tag and the model together. The only down point is if you just want the model, you can lumber with having to buy a skin tag as well. And it looks like the price of the model is going to be very high because of that. I've seen prices from Waffle, I think it was around $69.99 US, and from Easy Toys it was over 70 US dollars. So that's a really, really high price for what is actually not even going to be a very large model whatsoever. They have made, or there has been one of these made previously. I think it may have been under a different brand name, Skyjet or something like that. But or maybe it was Sky 400. Let me just try and work out what it was. Yeah, it was Sky 400. And I'm sure it will be the same mould as was released. And that was released way back in 2009, in fact. So a long, long time ago. The mould looks pretty good if it's using the same mould, which I imagine it is. And actually it's a model that I'd be super interested in getting, actually. And a model I'd be interested in getting. I'm not entirely sure I can stretch to $70 for it, though, I have to say. So yeah, I'm a little on the fence on this one. I want to give this one a high flyer, a supersonic even, because it's interesting, it's novel. I'm going to, in fact, give it a supersonic. It's an interesting, novel release. I like the idea of having the skin tag coming with the model. I don't like the price. So I'm in two minds about whether I'll get it or not. I may not. But also, it's one which doesn't have a release date associated with it, so who knows how long it's going to take for this to actually end up on the market. Okay, now that's gone through all of the releases that have been made. As I said, several of them come with flaps downs, and they were the JAL 747, the MIAT 787, the Airbus/Qantas A350 1000, the NokScoot 777, and the China Airlines A350. They all come with both versions, so you could say that there were two models there of each, not one. The only big issue, obviously, really with these is when are they going to show up? It's a real pain, especially if you're in the West, because if you don't pre-order, and you'd be crazy to do so, you're basically having to keep an eye out for them when they drop into the stores, which is annoying. And sometimes it means that you actually miss them because they just kind of scuttle in months and months down the line, and if you're not paying attention, you don't see them. Even the ones that are going to come out soon, or soonish, probably won't be here until September, and those ones are like the TAP A330, the 7779, the LTU A330, the NokScoot, obviously that Flybe because it's already been released, the China Airlines, and the JAL 747. Those ones are going to come out reasonably soon. So you could say, I should be knocking down some of these into other categories, because they're not going to be here for ages, are they? And it's slightly taking the mickey. So, for example, that Lufthansa A350, someone else is going to make it way before the jcwings release comes out. So I'm going to see, you could slot that one down into gasguster territory probably, because is it really worth waiting for? No, it isn't really. The same you could say about the Qantas Airbus A350 1000. Is it really going to be so great that you have to wait for it for 6 months or a year or God knows how long? No, probably not. And even the MIAT 787, even though I love it, is it really going to be so great that it's worth waiting for? And this is the super annoying thing, because they've got a really good 787, but they're just not really competing with NG models, because NG models get their models out at least within a couple of months after they've announced the bloody things. And jcwings just can't do that. So maybe that shouldn't be up there in supersonic territory. You know, they should be penalised for the fact that they just don't seem able to get their models out anywhere near the time they announced them. I don't know, maybe. Okay, anyway, that's the jcwings releases for this month. I imagine anyone who's paying attention has seen that NG Models has announced 27 400 scale reg hints for this coming month, which is insane. That's about as many as jcwings and Gemini and Phoenix added together, almost. So you've got to say that shows what NG Models are doing or planning on doing. And I'll see if I can get a release video out for that as well, which doesn't last for like an hour because there's just so many models in it, when they are actually announced. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this look through the latest jcwings announcements, and yeah, stay tuned for the next one of these videos. See if we can keep them going. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Instagram, you know the story. I'll see you next time. Bye.